making a continuing study of reported UFO sightings. From those files comes this photograph of a UFO taken at night as it was tracked across France. This is known as the Valençol UFO. The device is emitting brilliantly colored radiation and seems solid. If so, it is obviously capable of defying gravity. The French defense minister says that this type of appearance is being studied seriously by French science. Not so in the United States, where even the anti-gravity capability of the UFO is being ignored by official science. As they said in Spain, the alien intelligences of the UFO may originate from a planet called UMO, 16 light years from Earth, and they may not have. If we are to understand the origin of the UFO, we must be ready to vision another dimension which penetrates our earthly reality. It is a higher energy dimension from which the UFO can materialize to our vision, our cameras, and our scientific instrumentation. It is back into this higher energy dimension that the UFO returns to report to those who sent it out. The crew of the UFO is an especially designed robot humanoid which was produced to do its job in both dimensions. Target Earth is a long-time intelligence and sample gathering project of the aliens of the UFO. The incredible energy manipulation which enables UFOs to move between dimensions seems to occur underwater. The Puerto Rican Deep, which extends 30,000 feet under the sea, is one such area. Seawater covers 2/3 of the surface of the Earth, and in that water lives one of the Earth's most intelligent and environmentally adjusted creatures, the dolphin. The dolphin's brain is substantially more complex and in some ways superior to the brain of man. The dolphin's telepathic ability is highly developed, and with it he excels at communication with other dolphins. Today, the Canadian-edited UFO report and other such publications are the only other mediums which have carried stories which have filled the Venezuelan newspapers and tell of UFOs which emerge from under the sea off Puerto Rico and continue to the U.S., South America, and Europe. Undersea disturbances of a major nature have occurred in this area for many years. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's NOAA satellite had communications blacked out many times as it passed over the area some 800 miles up in its orbit, reported Dr. Wayne Messigian of Longwood College in Farmville, Virginia. In 1945, the U.S. Navy lost 5 torpedo bombers and a large 4-motored flying boat searching for the lost Navy pilots. Commercial and private airplane pilots have seen their aircraft under this strange influence lose instrumentation and electrical control. Airlines issue denials and pilots are afraid to talk in public because of fear for their jobs. In March of 1973, a series of events near Caracas, Venezuela, a few hundred miles to the south, established what may be a link between the very deep ocean areas of the Caribbean and the UFO. On March 22nd, hundreds of people witnessed a pair of flying objects trailing blue smoke as they approached from out of the sea and then hung motionless near the Caracas airport. Then, with a shrieking sound and a burst of orange flame, separated and vanished, one to the east and one to the west. For the next 9 days, UFOs rose out of the sea, hung in the air, remained motionless, and in various manners cavorted over the metropolitan city of Caracas, Venezuela. The Caracas newspaper, Ultimas Noticias, carried the UFO stories and reached the conclusion that thousands of its readers are now convinced that by evidence of their own eyes, UFOs have an undersea base in the Caribbean. UFO traffic into and out of the sea was seen by hundreds of witnesses. Other water areas have also been the site of UFO traffic. Teleportation occurs in the vicinity of a UFO. In May 1968, a well-known Buenos Aires attorney, Dr. Gerardo Vidal, and his wife and children, in a Peugeot 403, were teleported 4,100 miles by a UFO and put down near Mexico City unharmed. This Ford was teleported hundreds of miles in South Africa because it was near to a UFO which degravitated it and transported it, says the Flying Saucer Review. The aliens of the UFO are energy manipulators of a very advanced nature, far beyond our science. In the search for the method of communication with alien intelligences of space, such as the Overlords of the UFO, some of the most significant work in the world has been done by Dr. L.G. Lawrence, president of the Ecola Institute of San Bernardino, California, a research foundation. Dr. Lawrence is one of the world authorities on the use of biological sensors, such as that of the friendly laboratory philodendron, which senses the pain of Dr. Lawrence. As he purposely burns his thumb on his hot pipe bowl, the biological sensor, the plant, reacts with a squiggle of recognition of Dr. Lawrence's pain on the laboratory instrumentation. This is known as the Baxter effect. Dr. Lawrence developed his 3-ton stellatron for sensing biological messages which might be running free in the universe. He sets it up in remote areas, and it is shielded from all electromagnetic radiation, such as all radio and TV radiation, for instance. It can be influenced only by the etheric or bioplasmic pulses that influence plant and animal life. On October 29, 1971, and again in April 1972, on the Mojave Desert in California, intelligent communication from the direction of Ursa Major was received. One star of that system we know is the North Star. The intelligent character of the overall pulse train is implied by the discrete spacing patterns and the repetition of recognizable patterns. Again, for the first time in public, you now hear the modulated signals, a message as yet undeciphered, which originate in outer space. This has been brought to you by special permission of Dr. Lawrence, and it is a scientific first. Dr. Lawrence reminds us that radio telescopes, such as this giant multi-million-dollar installation in Puerto Rico, have had no results whatsoever in either sending or receiving messages in space. Radio telescopes seem useless in receiving cosmic messages, probably because they are looking and listening to the wrong possible sources. He recommends biological sensors instead. His low-cost equipment has resulted in a tape recording of interstellar communication, and it is on file with the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C.
We will return to Overlords of the UFO on the TV.
There is perhaps no more convincing witness to the UFO than the world-famous Israeli psychic Uri Geller, whose mind-boggling extrasensory powers have baffled millions of people all over the world. Geller believes that his powers are not unique to him, but are instead proof that energies exist in many different ways than those now known to science. Later, we will see Geller demonstrate his bioenergy powers before a live audience. Geller leaves little doubt about his feelings on the subject of UFOs.
Let me tell you, I've never seen an extraterrestrial being in my life. I wish I will, and I know I will one day. You know, maybe they're even around us, and we don't even know. Maybe they look like people. But I have seen UFOs. But other people, I'm sure if I'll ask who saw a UFO here, some of you will raise your hands up because they exist. I shot pictures. As a matter of fact, I had a fight with my publisher because I wanted to publish the picture of the UFOs that I took in the book, and he said no because it cannot be, it will be against your credibility. And I did it in the end because I'm not going to back away from the truth. I've once seen... 1 minute. I once drove in the Sinai Desert. Do we have another minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
I once drove in the Sinai Desert, and believe me, with a high colonel and his driver, me and a doctor, and suddenly, in midair, in Sinai Desert, it's clear, it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we saw this huge object that looked like a cigar shape hanging in midair. And let me tell you, it was as big as 3 New York blocks, and it was dark. It didn't look like a flying saucer. It looked like a cigar shape. And I was shocked. And immediately, I get goosebumps when I talk about it. I told the driver, please, look what, and the colonel. And you know what? They didn't see it. And they said, what are you looking at? I said, my God, can't you see that thing in the sky? They couldn't see it. So I think sometimes, what is really going on? Is it really implanted in my mind? Is it really not out there and only, or is it there and only the people who believe in it can see it? I don't know. There are questions that I can't answer myself.
Some call him a magician. Others call him a sorcerer. Some even call him a messiah. But whatever they call him, the world has never seen anyone quite like Uri Geller. So when Geller recently toured the United States, it was no wonder the crowds turned out to greet him, to witness his powers, and to line up for autographs on the cover of his new book. They stood in line because they had just witnessed an extraordinary sight. Hundreds brought with them broken watches and clocks, many of which hadn't run for years. Then they sat back and watched the bioenergy of Uri Geller go to work.
You can see that the second hand. Can the camera show the second hand?
That'd be a tough shot, I think.
I don't know how to show it, that it's not working, but tell me if you... Well, whatever,
Watches
it's not
that he is working with. He's got a whole huge handful. How many there? Maybe 10.
I don't know. Let's go. This is what I want you all to do now, and I know it looks silly. I'm going to shout 1, 2, 3, and all of us are going to shout work. I mean, we're really loud and really talk to these watches because that's the way it works. 1, 2, 3, work! Listen a little louder. It's your watches, you know.
We may have blown out the transmitter, I think.
One more time. 1, 2, 3, work! Hold this for me for a second.
Okay.
Now what I do is I sort of finally put an energy into it, and I say work, and I just talk to these watches.
His left hand over
and I'm sure most of them will.
And just clenching his fist. He's clenching his fist over and over, just above the watches.
It's working. This is working.
It is. Okay, here is a watch that's working.
Another one is working.
Hand them to me, and I'll try and identify the watch. It's a very ornate.
This is also working.
Jewelry bracelet watch is
It's working.
The second hand is sweeping along on this.
Working. It's working.
There's another one.
Working.
This is a Timex. Here's a Seiko watch.
Goodbye. Now wait a minute.
Then, while hundreds watched and thousands more listened on radio station KVI, the city of Seattle witnessed the power of biological energy in an even more convincing form.
This is what I want you to do. I'm holding these keys in my hand very, very gently. And what I want you to do, Ken, is put your hand on these keys, cover them, and cover these ones. No, not very, very gently like that, and the other ones. Now, this is what I do.
That's helping Uri had his hands covering the keys that are in the palms of Uri's hands.
And by the way, these keys are not mine. And I'm concentrating now, and I want something to happen. If you feel anything in any hand, tell me. If you feel any tingling sensation or heat or... Where do you feel this?
The keys are in Uri's hands. The little boy is holding his hands over the keys, but...
All right, now start concentrating, Ken. What you will have to do is you have to say, Ben, I hope you have enough feeling there, because I don't know how long this will take.
Uri's hands are flat. His thumbs are up in the air where everybody can see
I
them.
think something is happening here.
And he thinks something is happening. He has now discarded the keys in his left hand. The boy still is covering the keys in Uri's right hand. Uri, incidentally, is left-handed.
Okay,
now lift your hand, Ken. Lift your hand. Do you see any keys bending?
I see one. Oh, yes, this is bending.
One key
Wait
is
a minute, I have to show this to the TV. Yeah, this key is going. Yeah, wait a minute.
Yes, definitely. It's a big, thick brass Schlag or Schlager type of key.
I don't know what this
just
key
like
is
the
for.
one he bent last night
You
for
see
us.
what I'm doing is I'm stroking it very, very gently, and yeah, it's curling up more. I don't know
You see
how
that,
well
Ken?
you can see this.
It's really happening,
It's bending even more.
Yeah, this will curl up a little more here. You see, I'm putting an energy into it. Can you see this on the...
That's incredible.
There's absolutely no heat. Ken, touch the key, and you'll see the touch it under where it's
Right where
bending.
it's
Do you
bending.
feel any heat? There's absolutely no... You do feel, but there's really no heat. It's you touch it. I mean, you
Here,
can see if
yeah.
there's really heat or not.
No, it's
No, there's-
just the body
it's a
warmth.
body warmth
Body
that
warmth,
you're
but it's
feeling.
continuing to bend.
Just want to show it to the camera.
And you see that?
Oh, look! Another key of it.
There goes another one.
The key that he has bent is fastened to a key cluster,
I think another
and
one
another
is
key is
bending here.
beginning to bend on the cluster fastened
Yeah,
below
this is
it.
going also now. But let me just show it to everybody because the TV camera is so...
To back up the biological energy demonstration, Geller called on others in the audience to check for keys which may also have responded to the presence of Geller's energy. The Seattle Post-Intelligencer told the story of hundreds of radio listeners whose keys mysteriously began bending right in their pockets. In the audience, there were others who found themselves a terminal for the newly demonstrated source of power.
Keys in the audience belonging to people here were bending. And we've seen keys a couple of women have shown him which are beginning to bend. Here's a lady who is gray-haired, and she's just handed him a key.
That is bent.
And it is beginning to bend. Very slightly, but noticeably.
It's unreal because you know what's unbelievable here? That usually the kids that are coming to me, that their keys bend, and usually it happens to children.
Why?
Because children are more open-minded to this. I mean, look, look at these keys, they're totally bent.
Would you say that it's necessary for a person to believe they can bend
Yes.
before they will bend?
You see, a child believes that he can bend a key because he's totally innocent to it. He totally believes that his key can bend, and it does.
Coming up, Don't Stop with UFOs. Explore which...
Scene is in the southeastern United States, and the photographer, Todd Anthony, is out to take his first trial pictures with his new 8mm motion picture camera. He goes to his local airport to photograph the action of a commercial airliner making its landing. The airplane makes its approach, and following it comes the big surprise, a UFO. The UFO, exhibiting anti-gravity capabilities, follows the airliner right down to the surface of the Earth to its landing. The UFO is a bell-shaped type, which has been seen and photographed all over the world since the 1950s. From Australia to Western Europe to South Africa to Mount Palomar in California, where George Adamski made excellent still pictures, all with the same bell-shaped configuration with 3 spheres on the bottom. There are some very significant things about this UFO type. Under the bell-shaped hull are 3 spheres. It is these globes which, when excited by a high energy level, cause the UFO to become immune to gravity. At this point, the UFO begins to take on a glow. At a higher state of excitation, it is ready to move into its home dimension, a dimension which is not light years away, but right here, interpenetrating our reality. A significant amount of scientific research evidence now seems to confirm the amazing fact that UFOs such as this are interdimensional spacecraft. These same types of UFOs have been photographed, invisible to the human eye, by means of ultraviolet filters, and have been found to be trailing our commercial airlines' flights at 35,000 feet, just as this flight was tailed by a UFO right to its landing. This time, it was visible. We have presented evidence that many times commercial flights near a UFO have lost electrical control and their aircraft instrumentation. Pilots have confirmed this fact. Passengers have been injured as pilots have taken evasive action when surprised by a UFO which, to them, seemed to be on a collision course. Yet no world scientific agency or government group has seriously studied the problems of UFO encounters, or kidnappings, or losses of aircraft due to the UFO. Is the UFO mystery truly a scientific Watergate? an incredible and dangerous cover-up? Understanding of the UFO may be beyond our science and political system, but it is not beyond the human mind. The alien intelligences of the UFO and the human earthlings are all common inhabitants of the cosmic energy intelligence continuum. Dr. Lawrence at Ecola Institute showed us with his stellatron that the alien intelligences of the UFO might be in cosmic communication by use of a high-level energy which we know as etheric, bioplasmic, orgone, or nearly 100 similar names. But it is unrecognized in our science and in our civilization, which runs and communicates on the energies of the electromagnetic spectrum. Uri Geller mentally directs his biological energy and that of other people, and they bend metal keys. In the vicinity of UFOs, aircraft lose electrical control and instrumentation, and without doubt their structural integrity is also affected by this energy which bends keys. Other more incredible things are happening. During a single year, for instance, nearly 10,000 head of farmers' livestock have been mutilated in an area from Texas to eastern Oregon and Washington. Police and agricultural scientists alike are helpless. No flying predator exists which mutilates an animal's tender parts or swallows it up completely, leaving behind a bare skeleton. UFOs can be blamed, says the University of Wyoming student newspaper. There is now striking evidence that the cause is not a configurated UFO spacecraft, but what is mistaken for a UFO is something just as new to science. Invisible flying predators, which can be photographed with the aid of an ultraviolet filter 18A and Ectacolor film. This was first accomplished by Trevor James Constable, a UFO researcher for a quarter of a century. Constable, in Southern California, builds equipment which gathers orgone energy, or etheric or biological energy. Years ago, he noted that his energy-gathering devices attracted invisible critters. He also photographed them at 35,000 feet through an ultraviolet filter near a commercial jet. They were invisible to the pilot. This is an artist's drawing by Don Dixon of one of the frames of the research camera's film showing the invisible flying critter. Apparently, the predator sought by farmers and county sheriffs nationwide is the animal killer. The invisible flying predator. There seems no other explanation of what has happened to the thousands of mutilated animals. Once again, a new scientific door is opened, and through it we see invisible animals which can fly by degravitating themselves and which seem to live off the biological energy of other land-bound animals. They may or may not have any connection with the spacecraft UFOs, but it seems they have been mistaken for configurated UFOs with their humanoid crewmen, bound on their separate mission of the study of the Earth's inhabitants by means of kidnappings and sample gathering of Earthman's devices. In the U.S., it is at Federal Aviation Administration flight centers that air traffic controllers are trained to handle the routing of aircraft in the nation's air lanes, so as to keep constant eyes on the safety of flight procedures. But what about the UFO? What about near misses where UFOs and passenger airplanes were involved? These near misses have occurred, and when the pilot takes evasive action, passengers have been injured. This we know to be fact. UFOs are conveniently ignored by all. This is the FAA interpretation. Air traffic controllers are just that, not UFO traffic controllers. UFOs are ignored in the FAA procedures, even though it can now be proven that not only have near misses occurred, but that aircraft have been lost in the powerful energy fields of the UFO. the UFO problem has not as yet been permitted to be properly studied. Truly, is this expensive and complex world air traffic control system really adequate? The evidence now indicates that not only the military, but also the civil bureaus of world governments have been engaged in an incredible and deep cover-up of the real menace of the stepped-up UFO invasion of their target, Earth. The police departments of the world are helpless before the kidnappers of the UFO. This, too, we now know to be fact. How is this nonfeasance possible? This is Joe Harrell. He runs the Flight Control Center near Seattle, Washington. His job is to run it and train air traffic controllers. What we wish to point out now by a question is how extremely expensive governmental bureaucracy is able to ignore an obvious peril to world citizens by simply non-admission of the existence of this mind-boggling problem.
To my knowledge, UFOs are not included in any of the training programs. We would, of course, provide instructions to our supervisors on how to handle reports of UFOs, but it is not included in the training of a controller.
So I suppose the only way in which it would be included would be and I assume you admonish these people to be aware of any unusual circumstance.
That's right, and make the pilots aware of what they're aware of, and to this extent it would be included. But as far as specific procedures, no.
After $60-odd billion spent for manned space flight by NASA, it has been determined that man is truly confined to this Earth. The incredible secret concealed from the tax-paying public by both NASA and its congressional masters is that man cannot participate in long space expeditions. NASA has scientifically verified and kept very quiet the fact that the unstoppable cosmic rays to which every astronaut has been exposed destroys brain cells at the rate of 1% every 4 months. Since the neurons of the adult human brain do not reproduce, a space expedition represents irreparable brain damage and would reduce the crew to idiots in even the 8 years it would take to go to the nearest sun and return. NASA claims that the 13% loss of neurons would equal the brain damage sustained by an alcoholic. But NASA does not allow for increased intensity of cosmic ray bombardment as the astronaut moves in space. NASA must now admit that man cannot travel far in space because of significant brain damage which he will undergo. The main building of a graduate university of advanced study in Switzerland near Basel is Das Gotianum, acclaimed by architectural students and professional architects as being a space shape of striking originality. Das Gotianum was founded in the early 1900s by Dr. Rudolf Steiner, whose philosophy of science deals with the influence of alien cosmic intelligences on the human mind. Dr. Steiner was a highly trained scientist and clairvoyant who could see to a higher etheric energy dimension. He could see a view of cosmic reality which is denied to normal human vision. In some 6,000 lectures attended by the best minds of Europe, he made his observations known to those who would profit from this higher knowledge. This information is now available. Knowledge, the key to the secrets of the universe. Man's pursuit of the mystery surrounding the UFO and the Etherians continues. And although many books have been written about the subject, the best available information is speculation. So what we have offered you is the best available speculation. 2 questions. First, who are the Etherians? Notwithstanding their similarity to man, the Etherians' body is different from man's. They live in their own dimension, so we see only their servants, the humanoids. The Etherian overlords of the UFO have thinking minds, feelings, and emotions like we do. They have a strong sense of will and a strong sense of purpose. And they live in their own dimension, so they can't set foot in our material world, according to Dr. Steiner. Next, why are they here? Why are they interested in Earth humans? Maybe we are doing something here on Earth that is disturbing their world, their dimension. Maybe we are doing something here on Earth that is upsetting the balance of the universe. UFOs have been seen for centuries. Is this recent stepped-up activity over the last 30 years due to some recent disturbances within our dimension? Maybe we have sent giant shock waves throughout the universe, and the Etherians are here on Earth, trying to find out what they can do about this intrusion. One thing could well be the high harmonics of the sonic boom of the supersonic bomber, such as the B-1. An interdimensional space quake could have sent shock waves into their dimension. And, of course, atomic devices could be another element that is disturbing beings in other dimensions. But the Etherians seem to be sampling our dimension by human kidnappings and the taking of animals and the taking of sophisticated electronic devices made by our Earthman scientists. The Etherians seem to want to know what we are doing, and we had better know too. Think about what we are doing to ourselves, because it could have a profound effect on beings in other dimensions. And this whole question about UFOs could be a much larger question than devices simply flying around in our airspace. We will meet the Etherians, the overlords of the UFO, when we are worthy.